get to Tobago, an island which we actually sailed past about a week ago, but we had to go to Trinidad in time to enable us to check in to the country. It's supposed to be a bit of a wild sail to get to Tobago, but it's not supposed to be this wild.
Our reward for enduring this wild upwind thrash will be landfall on the lush, tropical island of Tobago. This may look like a tranquil paradise, but we are here to experience their wildest party of the year.
We are Amy and Matt. We spent the last 6.5 years sailing our 37-foot sailboat Florence around the world. In that time, we've crossed 4 oceans. Over 40,000 miles have passed under our keel, and we are now closing in on our goal, to complete our circumnavigation.
We have made it back to the Caribbean, where we will sail north, exploring and sampling the delights of these famous islands before we recross the North Atlantic Ocean to return to where we began this voyage in England. We're sailing to Tobago. We want to go to Tobago to see the carnival, but when we came from French Guiana we could not check into Tobago first. We had to sail past it to Trinidad, which is where you're actually allowed to check in from an international destination. So now we've got to go back on ourselves, which means going upwind against the wind and the current to get to Tobago. It's about 68 miles from where we check in, so we did a short hop, stayed in a bay along the coast here last night, and now we've got 43 miles to go today across the strait between the islands. The weather today is not very stable. There's a massive black cloud of rain that's just about to envelop us. I'm not sure what that's going to do for the wind. Currently sailing along under full sail, but I'm not sure this is going to last very long.
This is not the weather that is advertised for sailing in the Caribbean islands.
Welcome to the sunny Caribbean. If I remember, it was a little bit like this when we arrived into the Caribbean last time after crossing the Atlantic 6 years ago.
Welcome to the Caribbean, Matt.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just rain that big cloud brought.
Got a bit wild for a minute there. We had over 35 knots. We've still got 35 knots and driving rain. Matt came back on deck. We've been switching between watchers, but Matt came back on deck and helped me quickly put another reef, 2 reefs in the main, so we're down to pretty much storm sails at the moment. It's not too bad though, it's just not the conditions that were forecast out here today. We're expecting kind of 15 knots all day.
Just a squall.
Yeah, it'll pass through again and then we'll be back to down to 6 knots.
Full sail again.
Yeah. At least the water's warm.
Tropical foul weather gear, pair of shorts. Oh, that one went completely over the cockpit.
The squall subsided, but the remaining wind was so changeable that we took turns to hand steer in 2-hour shifts for the rest of the day. That was until the fishing line went off.
It's a small fish.
Oh, it's tiny.
tiny. Little bonito. Gonna put it back.
I'll put that back.
Yeah.
That is not a fish for dinner. He can go back. He's good.
Whoa! It's big. I just saw it jump. You know, it's a big fish when Matt's putting his life jacket on.
Trying to get dragged in over the side of the boat. Quite a large fish.
That's the biggest mahi that we've caught in a long time.
This is a proper sized fish. Oh, wow. Looks like he's been hurt at some point there. Had something caught on him that he grew into, maybe a net or something. Oh, that's going to be lunch and dinner for a good few days. We might make some friends in the anchorage to share this one with.
Yeah, hopefully there'll be some local boats or some cruisers in the anchorage who are hungry.
Otherwise we've got a lot of fish to eat. Oh. As we approached Tobago, the wind deserted us, and we had no choice but to motor the last hour against a 2-knot current, eventually dropping anchor a little after dark for a well-earned sleep.
So this is Buku Beach. It's a gorgeous little bay just around the corner from Stormy Bay where we came in to Tobago. We're anchored in 4.5 meters of water, and it's the first time that the water's been clear enough that on a calm day you can actually see the bottom from the deck of Florence. It's been absolutely gorgeous. It's a really quiet bay. I think it's normally a big tourist destination on the island, but it's been incredibly quiet. The beach has been pretty much deserted, and a lot of the restaurants ashore seem like they're closed too.
When we first came into this anchorage, it was really nice and calm, but that night Florence turned sideways onto the swell, and the swell built up, and we were rolling all over the place, so we didn't get much sleep at all. So much so that for the first time since 2019 it was bad enough that we dug the stern anchor out of the bottom of the locker and set that, and that just holds Florence's nose into the breeze, so instead of into the swell, so instead of rolling we just pitch gently, which is a much more gentle motion, and it completely transformed life on board and made this a really nice anchorage. But that does mean that now that we need to go, we've got to get 2 anchors up instead of 1.
Are you ready?
Got umbrellas. Yeah. The anchorages on Tobago are notoriously rolly, so I think instead of burying this anchor at the bottom of the cockpit locker like it was before, I think we'll strap it on deck so it's ready to use in the next anchorage just in case.
It's been a lovely stop here, and I would quite happily stay in this bay a lot longer. The thing that we're most excited about in Tobago is that it's actually going to be Carnival in about a week's time, and that's all happening at this end of the island, the south end of the island. So we're going to take the opportunity to take this next week. We're going to head up to some of the anchorages which are supposed to be absolutely stunning towards the north end of the island, and then try and make it back here in time for Carnival next week. So today we're going to sail around to a place called Castara Bay. It's supposed to be a nice little fishing bay, beautiful beach. It's about a 10-mile sail from here, but as is normally the case for us sailing in Trinidad and Tobago so far, it's an upwind sail, so it might take us about 4 hours to get there. a slight lift from what we had a minute ago.
Sailing upwind takes a lot longer than sailing downwind. This is because sailing boats cannot sail directly into the wind. Instead, we have to zigzag, meaning we have to travel almost twice the distance through the water, hence taking nearly double the time. Boats also sail a little bit slower into the wind. This is why when we planned our route around the world, we followed the trade winds downwind as much as possible. But sometimes, to get somewhere cool, you just have to zigzag.
But on a beautiful sailing day like today, zigzagging is no chore at all.
The coastline rises up as we go north along the island, down at the end where we've come into Tobago. It's really flat, that's where we've got the airport. And then as you go further up the island, it becomes much more hilly, green, and more like a rainforest jungle. So even in such a short space, it's only about 25-30 miles long. It's quite a big change in landscape.
Once again, when we arrived, we're the only cruising boat in the bay. Ashore here, there are lots of bed and breakfast accommodation, small bars and cafes, which meant that Matt was able to indulge in his favourite luxury.
Can't beat homemade ice cream. Not bad. This felt like a very relaxed and welcoming place to us. But the next day we would be in for a surprise. They would stop us exploring here and have us leaving feeling shocked at the way we had been treated.
The income in this area comes from both tourism and fishing. But we were about to find out why that doesn't always mix so well. In the morning, we rowed ashore to explore. But just as we were lifting the dinghy up the beach, we looked back and saw a group of fishermen start to lift Florence's stern anchor. So we jumped back into the dinghy and rowed straight back out.
It's not like it's early morning, it's about 10 o'clock in the morning now. We've been on deck, we've been on board, we've been on deck all morning. They've been fishing just on the other side of Florence. There was every opportunity for them to just come and say, hey guys, look, this is where we normally fish, would you mind moving? But they waited until we were rowing into the beach and nearly at the beach before they came and lifted the anchor. We were on the way in, they could have spoken to us and said, guys, we want to fish there, can you move your boat? But they didn't, they just came across and pulled up the anchor, dumped it on the back of Florence, no real care for damaging the back of the boat and no real care for pulling up someone's anchor on someone else's boat. One of the reasons we set the stern anchor is so we don't swing round and hit the fishing fleet that's anchored here. We've anchored out to one side and put the stern anchor out so we're held away from them. Lift the stern anchor up, we can spin round, hit one of the outboard engines that's lifted on the back of these and cause damage to us and the fishing boats. Relaunched a dinghy and rapidly rowed out to them, and they just gave us a whole diatribe of verbal that we're in their way and we should know that this is not where to anchor and that therefore the right thing is to do for them to just pull our anchor up. The other thing is they're completely disrespectful. They refused to talk to Amy. They just talking to me, said, ignore her man, I'm talking to you.
In the time that it took us to row from that beach back to Florence, they no longer want to fish here. Now they want to fish at the other side of the bay. Such a shame, because Tobago is a stunning island, and up until now, like Matt said, the people have been incredibly friendly. I was actually beginning to think that this is one of the friendliest places that we've been. Everybody's just kind of so positive and warm. That kind of messes up the day. We were planning to, there's a waterfall just about a 5 or 10 minute walk from here, which we were planning to go and check out, but yeah, I guess now we'll move on to another bay where there's hopefully no fishermen.
After that confrontation with the fishermen in Castara Bay, we just left. That's one of the advantages of having a boat that you can move. Your home, being able to move, is that when you don't have very nice neighbours you can just move. So we've come 2.5 miles along the coast to Englishman's Bay. Now technically we don't actually have permission from the authorities to be here. In Gastara Bay we did have authority to be there, but we're supposed to go up to the main town further along and get permission to come back to this bay. But given the reception we had there, we didn't feel safe, so we've come here. And you know, a lot of clouds have silver linings. This bay is even nicer. There is nobody here apart from a few people on the beach. No fishermen, clean sandy bottom, easy to anchor. We've got the stern anchor out to hold our bow into the swell, and it's just beautiful. So a lot of tension, a lot of tenseness inside after that confrontation, but here hopefully we can just relax and get back to enjoying the laid-back lifestyle in Tobago. The water here is really clear. We're anchored in about 8.5 metres and we can see the anchor on the bottom from the boat. And just on our starboard side here by the rocks, there is a beautiful coral reef, some of the best coral we've seen in a very long time. So we're going to spend a little bit of time here, spend some time editing, spend some time cleaning the boat, and a little bit of snorkeling when we get too hot in the sun.
This spectacular bay is reputed to be one of the most beautiful in the Caribbean, and it certainly became a favourite of ours.
So we've moved up to Charlottesville at the north end of Tobago in order to get permission now to visit the bays at the northern end of the island.
And what we're experiencing here is probably the reason why there aren't many boats here in Tobago, despite the fact that there are thousands within 100 miles of here in both Grenada and Trinidad in the Caribbean.
Yeah, so the bureaucracy required to be here, to get to this part of Tobago, we've had to sail past Tobago, 68 miles past Tobago to the international check-in port in Trinidad. We had to check in there, then we had to check out internally there, to then sail back 68 miles to Scarborough at the southern end of Tobago, where we had to check in again and out before we could then sail north to the northern end here at Charlottesville, where we now have to check in.
And they've now kept our paperwork so that in order to leave here we need to go back to Customs and Immigration to get that paperwork back, to then take that back down south and visit Customs and Immigration again in Scarborough to check in, see Carnival, and then also visit them again before we check out. So we think that by the time we leave here we'll have probably had 8 visits in total to Customs and Immigration just to sail this section of coastline that we wish to on Tobago and visit a few bays. Paperwork aside, the island of Tobago is a beautiful place to visit.
The nature here is spectacular. At least 18 species of hummingbirds call Tobago home, and many of the locals have feeders in their gardens.
Tobago is also well known for its waterfalls, of which there are many. This is Argyle Falls, arguably the most dramatic, and it's certainly made for a refreshing swim.
The beauty of this island is not limited to the flora and fauna on the rainforest slopes, but also extends beneath the waves to the reefs below. The Guyana current, which sped Florence effortlessly along for hundreds of miles from Brazil to Trinidad, also carries a rich load of nutrients. These nutrients come up against the shallow waters of Tobago and give life to a vibrant display of coral and sponges. The north end of the island boasts some of the best scuba diving in the Caribbean for this reason.
Tobago is a nesting site for leatherback, green and hawksbill turtles, so there's a good chance of seeing turtles in their element below the waves here.
Then it was time to sail back to the south end of the island for the event that we've been waiting for, Tobago's first ever independent carnival.
Trinidad and Tobago is the home of steel pan. We enjoyed 2 major steel pan events with over 20 bands, including this pan and powder night. A free event where the instructions were to wear white, listen to pan and get covered in powder. We weren't sure what the powder would be, but it turned out just to be talcum powder. Very tame compared to what we get covered in for the rest of Carnival.
Then came the official start of Carnival, Juve, a party that starts at 4 a.m. before dawn and leads you through the streets from darkness and into the light of the new day.
Huge trucks stacked high with speakers blast out the island's favourite soccer music. People pay to be part of a group which has a costume theme, a sound truck and a bar truck serving free drinks to those in the group. It's like a line of mobile nightclubs moving along the road.
Even though the crowds were packed and some had been awake and drinking through the night, we witnessed absolutely zero trouble or aggression. Everyone was just out to have a good time, and they were keen for us to join in the fun too.
Part of that fun is getting covered in paint, which the revellers squirt you with from bottles, or cover themselves in, and then come and dance up against you to transfer the paint.
Then it was on to the Grand Mas main carnival event.
The dress code for this event is to show as much skin as possible, whilst adorning yourself with as many feathers and sequins as you can carry. There are no barriers to participation. Everyone is welcome. But the group members tend to select their group months or even a year in advance to allow them to prepare their costumes.
The event is open for anyone to watch, but it's much more about releasing your inhibitions and enjoying dancing through the streets than it is about putting on a show. There were more people taking part than there were spectating. We started the day feeling very underdressed, but there were plenty of sequins and feathers to go round.
The difficult sail to get here, the days spent in customs and immigration, and the confrontation with the fishermen all faded away as Tobago became a huge highlight for us. We fell for the island's spectacular nature, warm, friendly people, and their ability to share a good time. Thanks for having us, Tobago.
Next time we have a special episode. Just 75 miles north of here in Tobago is our track that we made when we left England and sailed past Grenada. So in the next episode we're going to sail north and cross our outbound track to complete our loop around the world.
Yeah, it's not the end of this voyage though. For that we need to sail back to England, but it's still a very significant milestone, so it's going to be a very special episode. Don't forget to subscribe to catch the next episode. We release a video every 2 weeks.
If you'd like to find out more about behind the scenes on Florence, track our progress across the oceans in real time, find out where we are right now, or ask us pretty much anything, then please head over to our Patreon site and join the crew. We would like to thank everyone who supports us to make these videos possible, and a special thank you to our star patrons.